all showing, so I want to turn it inside out and just hide my knots away. So easy and fun. But I still have one little thread that needs to be tied down, and I just tie it to the notch right next to it. So it's kind of hard to see with that blue. Let me move that away, and you can see there's the little curve from the notch that was over next to this guy, and I just bring him through, and I now have like a little O and a little X, and I just bring it through and tie it there. Okay, so now we're ready to stuff. Yay, so exciting. So I'm just using some polyfiber stuffing, like you put in stuffed animals and pillows. You get it in the sewing section at the craft store, Joann Fabrics, wherever you can find stuff for sewing. And it's fluffy and soft, and I'm just going to stuff it into my little bag. And you can decide how fat you want your little creature. If you want it real stuffed, I'm going to put a little bit more in there. And then I've got to sew this flap shut for my creature. And I have a big flap. I kind of fold it a little low. Some of you, your flaps won't be that long. And this is kind of bugging me. I'm just going to trim it down a little bit, and then I'll be stuffing it in when I sew everything shut. This guy's going to be kind of short. He's not as tall as some of my weavings, and that's the fun thing. They all come out different. They all come out to be different little creatures, one-of-a-kind pieces of art that have their own little personalities, and that's really fun. So I want to talk kind of about the choice of yarn or ribbon that you use to make your creature. On this little penguin guy that I made, I wanted some orange peeking out because, I feel like often penguins have a little bit of orange, and I kind of wanted it like feathery down at the bottom. So I picked orange, and whatever you pick will sort of show a bit. So think about that. And then like in this bunny, it doesn't show much, but I did a yellow. So just kind of think about, I don't want it to show, so I'm going to pick, something that'll fade away. Or I do want a new color. It's really about your artistic expression and what you want this little guy to look like. Okay, so I'm ready now. I have my darning needle, has yarn on it that I've chosen to sew my flap down with. I put it on just like we have. I tied the X and O knot to the darning needle, and I made a big old blobby knot at the opposite end. So just like we've been doing the whole way. And I'm going to start sewing down my flap. And what I like to do is I start sewing from the inside where the stuffing is. And there's my cat Ben, who wants to be part of the video. So again, I start from where the inside where the stuffing is, and I bring my needle in to my weaving right by where my flap touches kind of that last warp thread, and I just go down and I bring it up through the inside to the outside. And I have a really long tail, so I'm going to trim it down a bit. And then I start to just do what we call a whip stitch, where I'm on the outside coming out now, and I go back up to the top of the flap, and I bring my needle through, and I just kind of make like a circle stitch. They call it a whip. And I just keep pulling those all the way through, and all the way till it comes down, and it's just like a little notch. And there's Ben. He wants the yarn. And then I'm coming back up, and I just come back down through both layers, my flap and my body, and I just keep making those circle stitches all the way around my flap. Here I am again, coming up above the flap, coming down through the flap, coming out through the body, And I'm just sewing my flap closed all the way around where that flap will close around the body. Now this one, I have kind of a long flap, so I'm going in a little deeper than I sometimes do. Again, that's the cool thing about art, especially this one-of-a-kind stuff. It all has its own little ways of going together, and it's never exactly the same, which is kind of the funnest thing. And of course, just like I always say, yours will be different than your neighbor's, just like your handwriting is different than your neighbor's. And that's how we get our personal expression into our creative pieces. And once I get all the way around this flap, I will be tying it off again. And then I will get to decide, do I want this to be a monster? Do I want it to be doll-like? Do I want it to be a bird? Do I want it to be a kitty cat? Like the one that's sitting right here on the edge of my table, wanting to get my yarn. I like to push all the little weird yarn pieces inside so that they're not showing. You know, do I want this to be a character from a movie like the Monsters with one eye, Mike from Monsters Inc., or do I want it to be, you know, a minion from Despicable Me? Do I want it to be, you know, like one of my animals at home? All right, I'm all the way around my flap. It's not my most beautiful job, but it'll do. And now I'm going to come up from the bottom one more time and just bring my needle around and go through that last knot I made and tie off. And pull it. And now I'm going to just cut it real pretty close this time because I don't want it to show too much. And you can always kind of move those inside the woven area and kind of hide them down in there. Now I turn them over, and this is my bottom and this is my top. And now I can decide, do I want button eyes? Do I want to cut fabric pieces? Do I, you know, want to put ears on them? So we'll talk a little bit about some of my choices on these last guys. On this guy, I did 3 layers of felt eyes. You know, just circles, nothing perfect, with a little triangular beak. And I glued these pieces on using hot glue, but Elmer's glue works really well. In the classroom, I will glue them on for you with the hot glue, but at home, if you want to make a bunch of creatures, certainly the Elmer's glue will work just fine. Or if your parents have a hot glue gun, they can help you get those on. For my bunny, I cut a round felt piece and some little, you know, dashes of eyes and triangle, little bit bunny ear shapes and some flappy feet. On this one, I did a heart-shaped face with a couple circles and a triangle. I guess I like triangle noses a lot. And I put some flappy pieces on the sides. You know, your imagination will come up with a lot more than I'm not thinking of right now. You know, you guys have access to the buttons. We have a huge button collection. You could do button eyes, buttons down the front, you just on and on. You could always sew in some hair if you wanted to. Just have fun with your little creature. Again, the function of this piece of woven art, you know, it's not a basket that holds things. It's not a blanket to keep you warm.